Welcome to another episode of Explore the Opportunities with AI. Today, I am so honored to have Dr. Dara Cunningham. She's a global recognized expert in enhancing human experience through technology and design. With dual PhDs in cognitive science and design planning, she has collaborated with major corporations like Google, CD, IBM, specialized in IT consulting and experience research focusing on integrating advanced technology and AI in healthcare and design. So I am so glad to have you here, Dr. Dara. Welcome to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Before we begin, please share with us one fun fact about you that most people might not know about you.
Yes, I took a fairly extended gap between graduating from high school and starting college. Ended up being not starting college until I was 25. But in between there, I traveled the world. I lived in London. I lived in Australia, traveled around Europe, traveled around the South Pacific, and just really broadened my horizons.
Wow, that's amazing. You've traveled so many places before you're 25. What a risk taker.
By the time I got back, I was ready to start school, and then I actually spent about the next 20 years in school.
Oh, wow. 20 years. That's a long time. Yeah. I love traveling. I did that after my 2 years at a community college. I traveled 6 months in South Korea, and then I flew to Japan, Philippines, China, and Vietnam. It was amazing. Yeah, definitely. We had so much fun. And yeah, highly encourage anybody. Like you said, not for everybody, but it is just so much easier to do so before have kids.
Yes.
Right. I would love for our audience to learn a little bit about you and your career background and your journey to where you are right now.
Yeah. It's a long journey for me, especially college until later. But I got interested in design when I was living in Australia, and I just happened to get a job at one of the first desktop publishing agencies in the world and learned digital design back on the working with Mac Classic, and ended up specializing for a number of years in helping companies, ad agencies in particular, to move from the world of doing everything by hand to digital design, and became a specialist in digital pre-press and worked for IBM, supporting their Lightning Press systems for a little while. But I just followed my interests. I loved working in design. I loved getting into tech. And I started training people while I was at IBM on how to use the systems, and ended up going back to school. I had gotten my Bachelor of Fine Art at that point, and then I went back to get a master's in information and learning technology and developed online courses. And that degree actually turned out to be a precursor to user experience. It wasn't called user experience. It wasn't called human computer interaction, but that's basically what the degree was about. So I started working in that field and rose through the ranks there in the education world until I was running campuses, established online education programs, managed faculty, curriculum, all that sort of stuff. And in that world, it was important to get your PhD in order to move forward in education world. I started my PhD then, and in the process of working on that, following my interests again, ended up completely changing careers. I still train people. I still do education as part of my job, but I really moved into the world of user experience. But what I studied was cognitive science and design and planning in the architecture school at the University of Colorado. And I now am one of, I believe, 4 people in the world that had that dual degree. It was a long haul to get it. It took me 10 years, and it's difficult to bring together faculty from different departments to agree on a dissertation that combined on both sides of that experience. But that I ended up doing research about how to make buildings sustainable and keep them sustainable through measuring people's experience they're in, and showed that there was a real need for that in the architecture world. But came out of that and there weren't really any jobs in that area. So I had been doing user experience research and I stayed in that area. And I'm still in that area, but I was trying to move back more into study of the built environment and improving people's experience with that.
That's fascinating background. So you're like one of the pioneer in the UX design back in the day where it doesn't even call it UX design. It's just amazing. And you
Yep.
probably can see the process, like even when you first started as working for Apple, the press and all the design back then, it must be so different than now. Yeah.
Yeah, it isn't. I do really that most companies, not all, but most companies who have a big software presence are concerned about the user experience in a way where they weren't. And 20 years ago, especially for software that people use in their work life, which I've spent a number of years working on, the thinking was that we pay you to use this software. So who cares what this experience is? You're getting paid. But employers have gradually figured out that an employee's experience in the software they use for their work is really important, especially in critical environments like healthcare, because the more time people spend trying to do something on the computer, the less time they're spending with patients. So you want them to be spending their time with patients instead of just trying to figure out how to do it on the computer.
And also a lot of people like go into the healthcare space. Necessarily, they're very technical. And so if the system is very complicated, I can see that there's a lot of frustration there. And I do see that it's a huge market for it right now, especially if the AI come into play. So you've been working extensively in healthcare tech over the past decade. How do you see the AI integration involved in this clinical systems that you feel like it's like saving a lot of work and resources?
Yeah. I spent about 5 years working with DaVita on basically replacing their old clinical systems with the new modern experience that is omni-channel and device independent, browser based software. But one of the things we implemented was AI program to help identify patients who were at risk of dying or being hospitalized. And it was a system that took into account basically algorithms that looked at how they were doing, what their comorbidities are, like, for example, having diabetes or having congestive heart failure, and would use the scoring system in order to alert staff that this person needs extra care and may need additional resources to keep them alive and get them in better health. It's one way that I've seen AI successfully used in clinical software to help, just making it more efficient and following employee workflow freed up a lot of time for staff to respond to those sorts of risk alarms, basically alert and spend that time with the patient and finding the resources for them in a system where previously they would have been spending the majority of the time trying to enter and re-enter information about and follow the regulatory and reporting frameworks that they have. That's one way indirectly that AI was very helpful in those systems and allow vets to spend more time with patients. But in addition, in a sort of more recent, I was working in utilization management software, which is more on the billing and insurance side. And for anyone who works in healthcare, it can be hard to believe for people not there, but these systems still run on faxes everywhere. They're still faxing back and forth between insurance and the doctor's office, and it's based on that. So systems really have to deal with that, and that incoming constant influx of what used to be paper-based is now benefiting from AI by allowing AI to take over reading those faxes, refilling information wherever that it can, and notifying staff of a potential for a denial or approval of services based on what is in that fax, which helps a lot in terms of efficiency and getting patients treatment quicker, assuming that they're approved. But while this is a great technology to implement, I think all of us have heard in the news about the healthcare CEO, his unfortunate demise with a disgruntled patient who was denied automatically. So it's one of those things where it's a double-edged sword. It can be very good. It can be very helpful. It can make things better for the patient, but it can also make things worse. That particular case really showed that humans still need to be involved in the process, at least for now.
Thank you so much for actually sharing a real case examples. I've heard a lot, but I actually don't know how much are the new AI technology integration are actually adopted in the real world. But by you sharing this, so I see that it is applying. What do you think are the percentage of the approval or denial for the AI technology integration in the healthcare system as of right now?
Oh, that's a good
How close
question.
are we implementing AI in this area? What do you think?
Yeah. It is being implemented in existing systems. There are also some programs coming out that specialize in that process. Yes. See if I can find the name of one. It's Oyster AI is a company that is a startup, like a lot of disruptors have been, where they're coming into the space and attempting to circumvent some of the newer or older systems that have been out there for a while. But I will say that even though AI is being implemented, I think there is a healthy suspicion of how much control or how much power we should give AI in those systems where you need a human to review what's going on. So I think there's great potential, but for healthcare in general, they're late to the game in terms of digital transformation and modernizing their systems. And electronic charting has been around, but it's still being implemented and be very new to a lot of even large companies. So they're providing the proving ground for how successful these new implementations of AI can be in healthcare.
Yeah, so like earlier, you shared an example of energy and the resources it takes to completely implement like the new system. Can you like walk me an example like of the steps that are involving in order for the new system to be implemented like entirely?
Yeah. Well, one advantage with particularly the Gen AI is that that is something that can be implemented in an older system in a way that connects data that previously was siloed. And that's a problem with so many really older systems is the data is siloed and can't hold the report analysis they would like to. Data isn't connecting, not connected, getting in kingdom that's well over. Gen AI gives an opportunity to skip redeveloping the whole backend and allow the AI to access information like a human and put that information together to do the kind of reporting and analysis that we need. Other advantages to implementing AI in older systems are things like you can implement optical character recognition and have the ability to read those standard, formerly paper-based documents and pull that information into the system where previously a person would have had to have been looking at the facts and typing it all in. And every step along the way, with a human in particular, you run the risk of having errors. You do with AI as well, but having both together can that much more efficient and still give stop gaps or AI alerting a human when it sees an issue and the human telling AI, you didn't get that when I fixed it for you. But having said that, there are some implementations of AI where it does require a lot of back-end work, depending on how the system was designed in the first place. Development-wise, and I will say, although I have spent a lot of time in computer science, I'm not the person doing the coding in the background, but I have seen some very major efforts to implement underlying AI systems in these older systems across the board they are multi-year efforts.
If today if we wanted to implement just admin process into the, let's say like a clinical process, just something that's not too risky, maybe just like it's just the patient information, right? Filling out all of the questionnaires and all of that. If a traditional way of doing that, and then if we need to implement a new AI process to come in and eliminate that process, how long do you think it take for the new system to be in place and have it up and running?
With particularly the Gen AI again, chatbots have come a long way and they're so much better than the old VRU systems that they show great potential, and wherever they are being implemented, they are really useful. And it's getting to the point where that can be voice. You can have a bot that seems like a person talking to you, asking questions, and gathering your data. The transcription and translation between voice and text has grown by leaps and bounds over even just the last years. When I graduated with my doctorate, we were recommending people use machine transcription because it was so wrong, most. But now it's much better. It's not perfect, but neither are people in terms of transcription. It is about on par with having a human transcribe a recording. So, yeah, it really depends on what the intervention is. If it is just having someone who is like an agent who can talk person, that's not hard now. It is an underlying analytical tool that's more effort to implement into a system.
So the process would take, if it's a clinical that trying to implement it. No, I don't know if it's crushing. Oh, it's just like if they implement the Gen AI, could it be like 1 month, 1 year, 3 years? That kind of term.
Also, the last project I worked on where we did implement a Gen AI feature, and it was not clinical software, but really it was a helpbot tool to help people find answers. It only took about 6 months from the initial, it came out of a hackathon that we did. Somebody programmed a chatbot to interface with our existing training and help documents. And it very quickly became a way that you could just ask a question. You didn't have to know the keyword. You didn't have to search. You didn't have to lead the system to view a training video. You could just say, hey, how do I do this? And it would give you a reasonable answer. Oh, that's very short term, easy, thing to drop. Again, it was able to connect siloed pieces of data that the system was unable to connect without major reprogramming, just by dropping in an agent to connect those pieces of data.
That's cool. So yeah, it seems like within this short period of time, there's going to be a lot of changes in advance with AI technology. But earlier you shared that the CEO of United Healthcare, the controversy surrounding in AI healthcare and decision making. What safeguards do you believe are necessary when incorporating AI into critical healthcare processes?
Yeah, it's really making sure that there's that human oversight. My understanding, and I haven't read the full manifesto, but the person who killed the CEO of United Healthcare was that he was frustrated with getting automated denials and no one, not a person, reviewing his case or him. And I obviously don't condone violence as a way to deal with things, but it did spur a larger conversation about how AI is being used in healthcare. For now and the foreseeable future, that human intervention is still needed. You cannot trust AI to make the right decision. It might make the right decision as far as it's concerned based on profit and loss parameters or rules that it has been given, but that human touch is really important to make sure that we're not losing sight of the people who need that care.
Yeah, there's that too. So in a duel of AI technology and human interactions, or it's just like having a human to, it's just like having a manager to like approving of the process is still very necessarily, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the approval system that I've seen and that I worked in, there is someone who is called a clinical reviewer. That is a nurse or a doctor who the system can automatically say, okay, we think this is the decision that needs to be made, approved or denied, and this is why. But that clinical reviewer still needs to say yes or no, or dig into it further. So that's the piece that when we start getting to automatic denials that are not based on maybe the person's insurance just doesn't cover this. That's an easy automated denial. But if it's for another reason, then there still needs to be someone who's reviewing it to say if this is medically necessary or not.
Right. Yeah. And it's just sad too because like I feel like AI can actually easily detect like this insurance approved, like something like that. AI probably can easily detect, and it might bypass if there's no human that are there to like carefully review the process. Yeah, wow, there's a lot of things that still need a lot of work to have human side by side with AI technology.
Yeah.
What do you feel like with your opinions on the healthcare technology in terms of efficiency versus personalized patient care when it comes into using AI technology?
Yeah. In an ideal situation, AI should give us both efficiency and because of that efficiency, free up more time for the clinical staff to review what's going on, talk to the patient, interface directly with the patient. I think AI has great potential to eliminate a lot of the things that might be the sort of tedious, clerical, administrative sort of tasks, and allow clinical staff to spend their time on healthcare and with the patient. So it's just really a matter of uh, implementing it in a way that we don't lose sight of that. But that is why we want to implement AI is to have medical staff spend more time with actual patients.
Mm.
But in addition, there are great strides being taken with AI, particularly the healthcare research side and helping with diagnostics. AI is coming up with potential new treatments for patients for hard to treat diseases. It is able to connect global research and come up with new and novel ideas. It has helped with implementing or developing and implementing new drugs that are based on people's genetic profile, which is just amazing that is happening. And AI has helped us speed up that process. AI has also helped with diagnostics in terms of things like mammograms. That you train AI on millions of mammogram images, and it has come up with uh, more accurate ways of finding cancer, things that maybe humans miss when they look at the image scans. So there's great potential there. And telehealth. AI is become a part of telehealth systems and allowed for patients who are in rural areas or who have a rare disorder that there are no specialists in their area, or patients who are homebound and typically don't go out to a doctor to get more accurate and personalized monitoring and accurate and personalized healthcare plan, and the ability to bring in, again, those people, the human touch, where it sees a need for it.
Yeah. So there's still a lot of potentials for AI in healthcare. There's a lot of when AI come in place. This I always say, let's decentralize AI in healthcare. What do you think are the concept of the decentralization in healthcare in AI, especially after this JP Morgan Health Tech Week? What do you foresee in this industry that would help in terms of decentralizing AI in healthcare? I'm not sure about this.
Yeah, yeah. And by decentralization, we're talking about integrating AI tools in smaller clinics, in wearables, in patients' homes, telehealth. AI has really contributed to that ability for people to monitor their own health. And instead of having to wait for an appointment, just find out, is my blood pressure too high, or how is my heart doing? Uh, we have digital tools that can measure that and feed that information directly into a provider or a clinic, so that patients can know that they're being monitored, and that if there is something significant that needs to be looked at, that AI will alert someone. That they're not out there by themselves trying to figure this out, that there's a connection between them and their care provider, and can be 24-hour monitoring with wearables that can alert any issues that come up and get help.
Yeah, so definitely, especially during the pandemic, one of the problems was like the hospital bed. There weren't enough. And in most places, especially like in the ER places as well, I feel like it's a recurring problems that like they don't have enough hospital bed. And do you feel like having at home monitor for the patient would help tremendously in this area? And it's also saving a lot of resources as well. If so, how do you feel like we can optimizing in this area, having like digital monitor, in-home monitor, wearables? because a lot of the time, all the nurses are, you just monitor if they're at hospital. Yeah, so I'm just like looking into that area because I am into wearables. And a lot of time when you're looking at wearables are just like monitors. I'm not sure about more of like critical patients, but in terms of like mild patient, there's a lot of like wearable that you can use. But in terms of like more of like at risk patient, where do you feel like this can be in place with the system and monitor or managing? I don't know. I'm so sorry, I'll go all over the place. But this is my idea. Like when you mentioned the wearable and at-home monitor.
Yeah. Yeah. AI is being used in that way now and allowing a lot of patients who may have been hospitalized for a long time to stay at home and only come into a hospital if they have a reason to be there. The AI can help them in monitoring at a distance, and they only need to come in if there's an emergency or there's some major anomaly in what AI is seeing in their healthcare reading. And that can help across the board, again, with those rural, isolated patients to patients who may have been in a nursing home or that sort of facility. Gives them a longer time to stay at home and not need to be separated from their family or lose their independence by having that ability to monitor their health from a distance. That's really important for mental health, which is another area where AI is being implemented successfully. And some of the new AI therapists are there to both keep people company, but also help monitor their mental state and alert clinical staff if that is rapidly deteriorating or if they seem to be depressed and possibly in need of treatment for that. But and I think we talked about this a little bit in our initial conversation, that AI powered robots are being used as companions in some places. People who just don't have anyone. More and more, we are seeing that loneliness is a mental health issue that can cause major health problems for people. So AI can take a role in helping with that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, the study said that if people are feeling lonely, it's like almost as the same as if they smoke like 16 cigarettes a day, right? Or
Yeah.
12, I don't remember. But that was something like the equivalent of the stress or how it affects into your health. And that is scary. Yeah, I do have a family that had went through this, and it is really sad. Yes, and I feel like, especially in America, I just feel like because of the culture of the independency, the culture of is I or me culture. Whereas in Asia, I felt like if you're in a family member, it is more like togetherness, and the culture is like you always have to respect the elder. You have to take care of them. And it went through with my parents, and I can see the downside because my grandpa has dementia, and for 13 or almost 15 years, 14 years that he moved in, and we just didn't know the symptom of having Alzheimer or dementia. But then with my parents being Asian, we always take care of the parents and always like really tune in and being really respectful. But then the downturn of that is, yeah, my parents went through a lot of hardship, emotional hardship as well. Definitely, it is a difficult in this area, and I'm just so glad that AI can help. Like now, my grandpa transferred to a nursing home, and when we visit, it is really sad for him. He really want to go home. In a term, is the nurse said every morning he would grab all his backpacks and I'm going home. So it is sad too in a way because it's for when he's at home, he has so much freedom. He go out still, he walk. He's a very active person. He's in his 90. But now he is in a nursing home and I just felt he eat, sleep, take snacks, right? And watch TV. That's his only activities. And I can see that why he's just so depressed as well. Yes, yeah. So I hope that in America, we're more adopted into the AI space, and hopefully, there's something that, even into a nursing home that are willing to fast adopt. I know that the AI technology is there, right? In Korea, there's this AI doll that it would just talk to the senior or elderly, like continuously, and it's very popular. Even if something like that available in the market now, today in America, how fast do you think that we'll be able to adopt it? Given that I just feel like at nursing home, there's a lot of laws and regulations. If there's something like that, how do you think, how quickly are we adopting the new technology?
Yeah, I don't know. Um, I really don't know. There are a lot of regulations around patient privacy. That's huge. And it is one of those things that a lot of companies are wary of with AI is they don't want their data becoming part of the vast data lake for machine learning. But in terms of the way AI is implemented, it's really as secure as your environment. And it is a matter of setting up independent, secure AI systems that only operate with a proprietary network. There are differing opinions on whether cloud is acceptable for that versus having only on-premises servers, which some companies are actually going back to. They were on premises and they went to the cloud and then they decided to pull back because they weren't sure that the cloud was secure enough for their data. But that's in healthcare in particular, that need for patient privacy and not having patient data used has slowed down some of those interventions that we could have put in place. But I don't think those are insurmountable odds. And I do think that there is a way forward for us to just ensure that the environment that AI is running in is secure enough to run it.
Are you for it? What's
I am. Uh, it is tough, though. I mean, if you look at it from on the point of training AI, the more data you give it, the better. But small language models are becoming the standard now for systems where there's a specialized need and you don't want to train your AI on everything in the world. You only want to train it on a certain thing. And you want to make sure that the data you're using is going to stay private and within that small network versus the large language models like ChatGPT that go out and try and access everything there is out there. But even those systems are implementing systems like ChatGPT are offering GPTs that do not share data and that only operate within your small, secure environment. I think that got the greatest potential. It means it's a little slower because the more data you provide, the better, the faster your AI comes up to speed. But I think it's a way forward while keeping data private.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, because I just know that there's a lot of internet right now is just talking about AI and data privacy, especially in the mental health space. Yeah, it's just like it has popped up a lot, and there's a lot of law and regulations, and even people that are like pointing out tediously, oh, here's what your company is not following, but it's in like in the gray area. But for me, it's something like if they're using their EEG, right? So there's their brain data. So this company would say that we don't leave their names, right, in this pool of data, so we keep them as anonymously. But then someone argues that yes, even if you leave their name anonymously, but their brain data is like a fingerprint, it's very unique, and so they're like, you can't really do that. But then for them to, in order to understand, learn more about the brain and how it works, then they like the more that data that they get, the better it is. So what's your thought on this? I just
Yeah. Yeah. In research in general, data privacy is a top concern, and we go to great lengths to personalize the data and try to make sure that we are not including any information that could lead back to who said it or where it came from. But it's hard. It's hard, particularly if you're trying to provide accurate diagnostics. You want to not only have the data, know what the end result was. You need to be able to connect, say, if you were looking at someone's heart rate and how their EEG scans, to be able to know, did that person survive? What were the interventions? Were they successful? You have to be able to track that person over time. Yeah, it again comes down to keeping things very secure and very locked. And that's always iffy as well, because we know there's always the potential to be hacked, or for security to not work the way that we thought it was going to work, or for data breaches to come out. So it becomes one of those Occam's razor type of situations where you have to determine where are we doing the most good with the least amount of harm. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, especially in research and development, because especially in the brain, right? I just feel like there's so much that going on in our brain that we don't know. And having that data privacy, of course, getting consent, but at the same time, if there's too much restrictions, I just feel like it would probably slow down the process. And I was also thinking, what harm can it do? So what if somebody look into my brain, find out that data about my brain, what harm can they do to it? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of unknowns there. We don't know. And I'd say in terms of privacy, 23andMe and Ancestry, those sorts of genetic databases have really pushed the bounds of what people are willing to open up. I think for a lot of people who've submitted DNA to one of those systems, they're not really thinking about privacy or data privacy when they do that. But that means your genetic sequence is now in the database. I think I know mine is, and it's one of those things where I've decided I'm okay with that. But we're at that frontier of, again, we don't know what will happen with all of these different repositories of very personal information. There's a lot of potential for good and potential for harm.
It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah, I think there's always the good and the evils.
Um,
Yeah. So for in terms of like ethical consideration, where do you think it's most crucial when we're developing AI solutions for healthcare?
yeah, biases in AI models are big, and that's something that a number of people have exposed over the past few years, and that AI systems are biased by who programmed them and what data they were fed and what biases are present in that data. Particularly, a lot of female and people have looked into data biases and said, yeah, they're pretty clear. I think one of the most famous, and I'm not thinking of who ran the study. I'll have to see if I can find it. But there was a woman of color, a Black woman, who, in testing the system, found that AI facial recognition wasn't recognizing her face unless she put a white mask on. It wasn't recognizing her skin tone. It wasn't registering as a face. That's pretty big. That's pretty big. That biased data. But in addition, that privacy, data privacy, when you're using data for training, that's crucial and it's difficult to do. And really also for AI to remain transparent. Because it's in the black hole. Even the people who develop AI can't tell you exactly how it works.
So true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now trying to have transparency into that process and how AI is coming up with what it's coming up with. That's still an unknown. We don't know.
That is so true. Yeah. I'm not even technical, so I don't even dare to go in.
Oh.
So how do you envision AI transforming patient care and healthcare provider in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it has the real potential and is already showing potential to help provide proactive, personalized care for people based on their readings and their history and studying their genomic sequencing. It has the potential to help catch things early more than we do now and prevent major illness before it gets there and alerting providers to the fact that there is something going on that maybe the provider hasn't noticed yet. It really is being used to reduce administrative burdens, and that's clerical, tedious work that does not require a lot of medical expertise or clinical expertise, and freeing up those people who are clinical staff to work more with patients instead of just collecting data on them, being able to be with them and give that human touch. And as we mentioned, wearables are just huge. The fact that that's available to a lot of us now, fairly accessible to monitor your heart rate, your blood pressure, your sleep, your exercise, your stress levels. It's really grown by leaps and bounds over, even the last 5 years. That's become huge. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Dara, for coming on my podcast today. I learned so much and I love the extensive experiences that you had and for you share even the use case real life that is just so valuable. So I really appreciate you to be on our show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Have a great day, everybody. Okay, I have